This is the Bema Podcast with Marty Solomon. I'm his co-host, Brent Billings. Today, I'm with Josh Bossé and Reed Dent to consider the role of priests in the tabernacle through their clothing.
Yes, it's going to be a little bit of a weird one, probably in more ways than one. This is also my first time doing a proper episode with Reed, not whatever nonsense we did last time we were on the same call.
Nothing weird. There's nothing weird about this. Nothing weird.
A Genesis 1 connection there as well, since we titled it Tohu Vavohu.
Oh, nice.
It's very true. And yes, we're going to start in Genesis 1. And since Reed and I have a penchant for maybe taking a long time with our episodes and drawing things out, let's just dive right into the text.
Okay.
So Brent, why don't you go ahead and start? We're on day 4.
Yeah, Genesis 1:14. And God said, "Let there be lights in the vault of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark sacred times and days and years, and let them be lights in the vault of the sky to give light on the earth." And it was so. God made 2 great lights, the greater light to govern the day, and the lesser light to govern the night. He also made the stars. God set them in the vault of the sky to give light on the earth, to govern the day and the night, and to separate light from darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, the 4th day.
As we've been doing throughout this series, we're just going to start, 10 steps back, just trying to pick out the most basic, rudimentary elements of each day narratively, like what's being created. How is God interacting with that creation? So what's the first thing that jumps out at us?
The day 4 is our center of the chiasm, the sacred times or seasons.
Sure, yes.
That we talked about so much. So that stands out, of course. And then I think it always strikes me how it's this big deal. Like God made 2 great lights, a greater light to govern the day, the lesser light to govern the night. He also made the stars.
Yes.
Maybe that's just like what Elle talked about in her series. Maybe it's just a form of presentism because we know so much about the stars and we know how vast the universe is, and we've seen the images from the James Webb Space Telescope. So like we have all this detail about it, and it's like, I guess from their perspective, like the stars are just these little pinpricks of light. Like there's no real thing there. So maybe it's just that. I mean, but it strikes me how little attention is given to the stars.
It's true, and that is in the text. Like if you read it, you have. God introduces the 2 luminaries, the large one, and it goes into detail like, oh, this one's for the day, this one's for the night, and then it just ends. And the stars, like it's 2 words in the Hebrew. It does seem very tacked on, but as we'll see, I think the stars end up becoming the most important part of this, at least for what we're concerned about as human beings. But just to not get too in the weeds, because my goodness, could we get in the weeds here? Especially since we're at the center of all of creation right now. Let's just get very basic. What is God creating on this day?
Day and night.
Get more literal.
Sun and moon.
Sun and moon, and as Brent mentioned, stars, lights. Now, this should sound familiar to us. We've talked about light before. Back in which day?
Well, I was actually, it popped out to me in a way that it really hasn't before. That, like, one of the most famous lines in the Bible, "Let there be light," occurs again here in verse 14 in the plural. Let there be lights.
Yes, absolutely. In the Hebrew, it's a little bit more complicated than that, because these are also like, it's not just lights plural, whereas before it was lights singular. These are also like a specifically light giving things that light up. So it's a little bit more. It's not quite as abstract as just this idea of light as a quality. And what we should note here is that this is, not only are we at the center of the chiasm, but for one of the other chiasms, we are at, on the first day on the flip side. The first 3 days, we have God separating, and day 1 we have light, day 2 we have water, day 3 we have dry land. And then we're going to see those same three kind of zones of creation, those locales. Again, now that they've been separated and given structure, now they're going to be filled. So we had light and darkness, and now we have these things that actually populate that rhythm that we talked about of light and darkness. And now it's not just light is day and darkness is night, but they're tied to these physical things, the sun, the moon, the stars. So this last chunk is going to be about filling that space that God has made. So we're going to need to keep our eye on that, because there's going to be a lot of, we talk about this every time, a lot of intertextual connections, even between different days. And this will probably give us new things to think about as we think about day one, and so on and so forth. But it's important to realize the connections there, because like we talked about last time, day and night, they aren't like these, supposed to be these, towering, like, kind of monolithic symbols that we often make them in our, like, in the stories that our culture tells of, like, light is good, dark is evil. God made both of them and made them to be in a cycle with each other. And we see that kind of playing out here. But what I think is really interesting is, like, as we've gone through these days, we saw this most in the last day of creation, day 3, we are starting to get, like, more intricate creation. Like, we had this extended thing, like, explaining how plants and seeds and fruits work, like, on a very rudimentary level. And here also we have, like, a lot more specificity in what this creation is for. So, like, the first thing we see God doing, God spends a lot of time talking about, like, the function and purpose of these lights. So real quick, let's go through, like, how does God describe these lights? Like, what is their function?
To govern.
Mm-hmm. And it's important because, later when we get into, man being given domain over creation, skipping ahead, these are very different words. And notably, this is the word that is used when God is talking to Eve in Genesis 3. So you got to keep that in mind for future context. And I think this is the first mention of that word. However, so yeah, they're supposed to govern over the day and the night. What's the very first thing it mentions? Just right there in verse 14.
Separating?
Yep, they are now separating. Now we have, like, again, we kind of have this continuation. Like we talked about last time, there was kind of this big step forward when now the earth is bringing forth life kind of on its own. Like, the creation is now starting to be, like, brought into the process of creation, kind of in this circular, I don't know, fractal Ouroboros, whatever you want to look at it. Like, things are kind of turning back on themselves now, and creation, like, we see this partnership playing out even with inanimate aspects of the created universe. So yeah, we have now the sun and moon kind of acting as participants in that cycle of separating day from night and marking one apart from the other. And then what else are they used for? Separate day and night. It's the second one. It's still in verse 14.
Yeah, marking times.
Yes,
and seasons.
Not just day and night, but yeah, like what you said, Brent. We have festivals, holy times, sacred times, and also for days and for years. And this is really interesting, but we're gonna have to get into that a little bit later. What's the last thing God says that they'll do?
Give light to the earth. Is that
give light to the earth? Which kind of seems like an obvious one, but it's interesting because spoiler alert, we're about to see a chiasm, and God is going to repeat all this stuff. So it must be pretty important. So we have separate day from night. Be these markers, these signs for seasons, days, years, and then give light. And then what do we find after it was so? In verse 16, God made the luminaries, like we said, the large one for the day, the smaller one for the night, and also the stars. And then in verse 17, we have the other half of the chiasm, where we see God set them, in verse 17, God set them in the firmament to give light to the earth. And then in verse 18, to have dominion in day and night. and then finally to separate light from darkness in that same verse. So we kind of, as we're coming out, we have a recapitulation of those same things
in reverse, of course.
In reverse. And we also have some interesting things, like the kind of the major difference is on the front end talking about the signs for the seasons, days, years. And on the other side, it just talks about the governance of day and night under the sun and moon. And it's a little bit different. But overall, like when we think about that governance, that control, that dominion, like how does that actually work? Like you're a human being, you're looking up at the sun and the moon and the way they go around and around. Like how does that actually govern or bring order to creation?
I mean, it just gives you a time frame of when to work and when not to work.
Yes. Yes.
Because they're not dealing with any artificial lights, so they're at the mercy of these lights.
We have this foray into time. Like this is a way of ordering time, and it's different from just keep the dry land and the water separate, or you have waters up there and waters down there. Like this is time playing out, which of course is going to culminate at the very end where we get to Shabbat. Won't go into that right now. I've got to save that for later. But we are these like the way that they guide us as signs or govern over us is as we walk through time between these modes of light and darkness. So to go back to the role that these play, and those stars that they're kind of the ones that get dropped out of the mix. I mean, it's the sun and the moon that get mentioned in the last half of the chiasm, but like when we think about the stars and like their use, like they're the ones that actually signal different seasons and things of that nature. Like light and dark on the daily sense. We see that with the sun. We see the months being kept by the moon, but the stars kind of keep time on a much larger scale. And if we're gonna think about like the role of stars, like what do stars do?
They are entertainment. They're the only thing to do at night.
Yeah, they're the only game in town. Well, the thing is that whose job is it to be in charge of the night again?
The moon. The
moon. And part of that job is what? It's separating day from night. And, I can see how that works. You can look out at night and be like, oh, it's dark. Okay. Supposed to serve as a sign, which, yep, check. You can look out and see if you see the moon. If you see it's dark, it's nighttime. It's time to sleep. But what about giving light to the earth? Is the moon always very good at that?
Not always.
Occasionally it's very good at it.
Occasionally it's very good at it. And then at other times it just doesn't show up. Right. It's completely gone. But what is still there?
Stars.
Exactly. And to go back to the themes we talked about in day one of God acknowledging that when we start our journey, we begin in darkness. We begin not knowing how to understand the world around us. That idea of relational truth and like not actually knowing where we stand in the world. That's what darkness is. That's why darkness freaks us out so much. And the promise that, of God saying, I'm going to bring light. And not only that, my personality, when I express myself, that's light. Darkness, yeah, I created it. I put you here in this dark world and you're going to have to deal with that. But who I am is a bringer of light. And now we see that even in the night sky, when it is dark, there's still light.
Well, and I think
those lights. Oh no, please.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it's interesting that another thing that the stars do, you think about how, sailors sail at night is by the positions of the stars. And so the stars also orient us in the dark. Like during the daytime, you get oriented by where is the sun in the sky, and now I know which direction I'm facing. But in the dark at night, when there is no sun visible, if you know how to read, it's like a map, and you can figure out which way you're going based on the position of the stars. Yeah.
Are the stars actually expected to give an amount of light that you can actually do anything with, though, or is it really more just about orientation? Like, even if you can't see anything, you know where you are because you can see the stars.
I think there's a little bit of both. Like, yeah, usually stars don't give you enough light to see, although, you know, I also don't know how much light you would get at night. You know, if you're a nomad in the middle of the desert, maybe the stars do a lot more for you then. I can't speak to that personally. However, Reed, you're exactly on the right point. Like, they're like the stars. In fact, it's because the stars are so numerous and so spread apart that diffusion is what makes them useful as a map. Is that you can look at it and recognize where the certain stars are and actually know like where you are, where you're going, even in the darkness. And not only that, like, and I think this is really important. Like, when we talk about darkness as a something that we have to live through, times where we don't know where we're going, there's a lot of times where we don't really know where we're going. But also, I think more importantly, and something that's even more difficult to articulate and sometimes figure out, is we also don't often know what time we're in. Because if you're out there, like, sometimes you just need a reminder that you're in darkness. Like, there's a different way of living when you're in a time of darkness. Like, you're going to need more rest. You're going to need more support. You're going to need to be more careful and be more kind to yourself. You know, there's all sorts of important things that are taught when we pay attention to how we're moving through time. And, you know, like, when the sun's out, you kind of don't have to worry about that. You just, you know, you can tool around and do whatever you need to do, and you just wait until it's less light, and that's a pretty easy thing to work off of. But when you're in darkness, it's a lot more complicated. Maybe the moon's there, maybe it isn't, maybe you have enough light to see, maybe you don't. But the stars' constancy is there permanently, and that gives light in the sense of like being able to understand where you are and what time it is, even if it doesn't give you the light to do the thing you might want to do. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, so we kind of have the same themes of God, like acknowledging how difficult it is to exist in the world as little squishy finite guys, and has set these lights in place for our benefit and for the benefit of all creation, to guide us through time. And what's interesting to me is that when the center of the chiasm is God creating, and it's when it says that he sets, the word for set there is the word for give. And I don't know, you know, I'm not Elle, so I don't know exactly like if this is supposed to have like the sense of a gift, but it is something that God is providing to us to help us navigate our way through time. 'Cause it's one thing to be able to see where you are, but to know what season you're in. If we're gonna maybe think in like Ecclesiastes terms, it's just as important to know what moment we're in as it is to know where we are.
So you talked about, and I think we're familiar with this as far as Genesis 1, where there's separation in the first 3 days and then filling in the next 3 days. But if you had asked me, like, just looking at the Mishkan as we've seen it so far, I would have thought, oh, the Mishkan is already full of stuff. Like the Ark is full of stuff. The Holy of Holies has all these elements filling it. Like, there's altars, there's just all this stuff. It seems like it's already filled. So
yeah,
apparently that's not what it's actually filled with. That is somehow part of the separation. And so we're going to see what it means to fill the tabernacle.
There's a wonderful little insight there, Brent Billings. And yes, it perfectly sets up what we're going to be talking about today in Exodus. And we're going to go through this one a little more piecemeal than we normally do. And most of what we're going to be reading is in Exodus 28, but because, I don't know, I feel like the chapter deciders, whoever they are or were, made a oopsie here. And so we're actually going to be reading the tail end of Exodus 27 and then the rest of 28, although not in its entirety. We're going to skip around, so nobody fret. So with that, Brent, will you go ahead and give it to us?
Okay, Exodus 27, right at the end. Command the Israelites to bring you clear oil of pressed olives for the light, so that the lamps may be kept burning in the tent of meeting outside the curtain that shields the ark of the covenant law. Aaron and his sons are to keep the lamps burning before the Lord from evening till morning. Mm-hmm. This is to be a lasting ordinance among the Israelites for the generations to come.
Yes, and let's pause there real quick. First of all, I mean, if you're still at this point wondering if these two passages of scripture are supposed to be tied together, why are we talking about oil here of all places? We already talked about the lamps 3 chapters ago. This is intentional. We're back to talking about light in the creation story, and lo and behold, we're talking about oil and light here in the creation of the Mishkan. And we also have a nifty little introduction. So we first have a reminder of the people, like this is a request for the people to bring something, which, if we'll remember, is also how this whole process began, with a list of things for the people to bring. And here we have a reiteration. Again, like we started another turn of the cycle of those images: light, water, land. We're back to light in the creation story, and now we're back to the beginning part. So it's talking about the people bringing the oil, the substance that the priests will use to create light. And this is also brilliant because it's setting us up to talk about the priests. And what I want to note here is a couple things. First of all, that the participation of the people is the first aspect of this, which is, again, like literarily, I hope everyone can appreciate the brilliance of this. What were we talking about last week? Community. Now here we have community being the point at which the actual stuff that light is made out of gets into the hands of the priests, who are going to be the ones tending to the light. And moreover, they talk about the lighting the lamp continually, tamid. And I mean, think about the conversation we were just having about the stars and the importance of this illumination, of giving light, and talking about the priest's role as having this light be available continuously, and the linking between saying, like, they don't have that light. We can't have these lights unless we have the community that we've talked about in the previous episodes. Like, again, this is one coherent process, one coherent entire creation, and these are all interrelated, and each piece relies upon all the other pieces. You're not able to separate them all out.
I'm just curious if there's anything to make of that. It is clear. I don't know what you guys have said before in the previous episodes yet, but if there's anything to make of that, it is clear oil from olives.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably something there, to be perfectly frank. I don't know. There's not a ton. I mean, actually, it's staring me right in the face. Yeah, because Genesis 3 was all about plants growing up out of the earth.
Okay.
Right? And so what are the people bringing? They're bringing the fruit of the earth, the fruit of that solid community. And that fruit is literally now becoming light. Oh, my gosh. Yeah. That's great, Reed.
I'm glad I can help you stumble onto that, because I mean, I'm just asking because I don't know, but yeah,
no, that's perfect. Yeah, I don't know about the clear part. I mean, I think there's some lessons we could take from that if we wanted to drill down and think about, like, the community's part of this process. Like, what is the community's job?
Well, yeah, I mean, I wonder if there's some olive oil as opposed to what other kind of oil, some other kind of oil, if there's something that's like labor intensive about the process, because it mentions like beaten olives, so they're extracting the oil. It's probably expensive too, I would guess, like olive oil. since it's clear? Is that like finer? I don't know. I mean, these are
it's definitely a quality marker, and that's something that runs through the whole Mishkan. You know, they're very specific about what kinds of materials to use, but I can't imagine it's too labor intensive in terms of like, I mean, I'm sure it is literally labor intensive, but it's like olive oil is used in a lot of places. So I imagine it's like not, because the substance itself is pretty common. You bring the best olive oil to this, communal center, which I think is kind of, to go back to the point I was making, like kind of talks about how the community has to show up in the tabernacle for it to work the way it's intended. Like if you are part of the community, like you have to bring the light. Like that isn't just the job of the priest or, your spiritual leader. Like you are part of that, even if you're like feel way on the periphery. Like the quality of your presence when you show up, like is it clear? Are you really there? Have you kind of pushed out all the other stuff? And if so, then like that's going to make the community as a whole flourish and be more full of light. And again, we're already talking about like how to fill this communal space that's been created. So without further ado, Brent, will you get us into the chapter proper and just get us kicked off here? What are we talking about?
Have Aaron your brother brought to you from among the Israelites, along with his sons Nadav and Avihu, Eleazar and Ithamar, so they may serve me as priests. Make sacred garments for your brother Aaron, to give him dignity and honor. Tell all the skilled workers to whom I have given wisdom in such matters, that they are to make garments for Aaron, for his consecration, so he may serve me as priest. These are the garments they are to make: a breastpiece, an ephod, a robe, a woven tunic, a turban, and a sash. They are to make these sacred garments for your brother Aaron and his sons, so they may serve me as priests. Have them use gold, and blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and fine linen.
So we're kicking off these priests who we've just heard mentioned kind of for the first time with the oil bit. And kind of oddly, the focus is on clothes, which might puzzle a lot of you out there. Like, why is this the first thing that we're talking about? We not that they don't necessarily know what a priest is, but like, what is this priest like? As a Westerner, I think like, okay, what is this priest actually going to be doing? Like, okay, we're talking about what they're wearing. And there's just such an emphasis placed on the clothes. Like, it's not just that they come first. Like, it's repeated that these garments, they're for Aaron's glory and splendor, or as you said, like dignity and honor. They're to make Aaron look cool, right? But they also have a sanctifying effect, and they're necessary for them to be able to serve as priests before God. Like, there's so much importance being put on these clothes, which, in our culture, we kind of think of as a little bit more like empty of that kind of significance. So yeah, what's such a big deal about these clothes? Like, why is it the clothes that make it possible for them to be a priest, a Kohen?
Well, and I'm thinking, in what way are these pieces of clothes giving off light?
That's a great
because
question.
it doesn't seem like they would be. But I mean, I guess the gold would be kind of reflective, and
yeah. I mean, yeah, and you have gold woven into the clothing and all over it. And we'll also see there's like precious stones and stuff. And actually, light will come up in an interesting instance. But what is the one thing that is similar between light and clothing?
I mean, I guess they're both markers.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Like, you wear particular kinds of clothes for particular occasions.
Mm-hmm. And even more to the point, like it's something visual. It's something you see, right?
Sure.
So maybe there's something going on here visually that people are supposed to key in on. Maybe there is something being communicated by the clothes. We talked about the stars and the lights. Like, it's not just that you can see them, but they also communicate information to you. They help you navigate, whether that's navigate space or navigate time through the seasons, and knowing how much longer the summer is going to last, because when this astrological or astronomical sign is over this part of the sky. Like, it's helping you navigate, which, as we've talked about before, like that is part of the priest's role. So there's some similarities there. But yeah, giving light through clothes. You got any thoughts on this, Reed?
What was going through my head is there's a psalm that talks about God being clothed with light. And so when you were talking about, priestly garments and clothing as a kind of wrapping or something, I don't know that there's much to make of that here, but that was, just those words were sparking that association in my mind, that it is something that but it's interesting because light itself is not visible, so to speak. It is what makes other things visible. And so maybe that's a distinction in the way that we were just talking about it from clothing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not seeing light. I am seeing by the light. Like, the light shows me other things.
And to kind of piggyback on that kind of nuanced distinction, we should remember too, like, what was created in this day wasn't light,
right,
as like that quality that we see by, but sources of light. So maybe the better way to think about this question as we move through these garments is like not whether they do communicate light, but like how are they a source of light? And if we kind of maybe take light away from the literal sphere, how are they communicating? We talked about light as the only thing in creation that comes purely out of God's expression. Like, he says it and it exists and there's nothing in between. It's the first thing God speaks. Like, light is tied to God's presence and God's like personhood. So how are they communicating God and God's presence and God's nature and being, and however else we want to frame that? How is that found here?
And is there something, because we also mentioned the idea of being oriented by the lights.
Exactly.
And so is there something orienting for the people about the garments of the priests?
Absolutely. That's perfect. I love that. So rattled off a bunch of different types of clothing. And so we're going to go through them kind of one by one. Some of them are a little longer than others, and we'll kind of jump around through it. But
hold on, one more thing to throw in.
Oh, yeah.
So the word for glory, the NET footnote pointed out that it is used previously for the glory of the Lord, which is true. Shows up in Exodus 16 a couple times, and then Exodus 24 a couple times.
Yes. The word is
both
kavod.
for the cloud. Yeah, both for the cloud and for the fire. But the first mention is actually in Genesis 31. Referring to Laban's sons talking about Jacob, saying Jacob has taken everything our father owned and has gained all this wealth from what belonged to our father, which is a really weird first mention.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know necessarily what to think about that, but I just wanted to throw that out because what a weird... I think the glory of the Lord concept makes a ton of sense in this context.
Yeah.
But looking at the first mention, it's like, is there like, what is there about that story that we might be able to learn something for what we're looking at in the Mishkan? I don't know.
Well, so the just on a linguistic level, the word kavod means to be heavy. Ironically, It's also the word for the liver, because it's the heaviest organ.
Now, what do you know about that, Josh?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's a word. It's also used throughout to describe like the hardening of Pharaoh's heart. One of the words for that is kavod. So that's it is an interesting word.
Although not in this form, apparently.
Well, either way, I'm not letting you drag me down a Jacob rabbit hole, because Jacob is low-key probably my favorite, and I could talk about him for the rest of the episode if we get into that. So,
all right.
So we're talking about
to the ephod then.
Yeah, to the ephod. What is an ephod? Let's find out.
Well, having read this previously in my life, I'm going to say, don't necessarily expect to understand what it is after reading it, but I will read this passage. Make the ephod of gold and of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn and of finely twisted linen, the work of skilled hands. It is to have 2 shoulder pieces attached to 2 of its corners, so it can be fastened. Its skillfully woven waistband is to be like it, of 1 piece with the ephod, and made with gold, and with blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and with finely twisted linen. Take 2 onyx stones, and engrave on them the names of the sons of Israel in the order of their birth, 6 names on 1 stone, and the remaining 6 on the other. Engrave the names of the sons of Israel on the 2 stones the way a gem cutter engraves a seal. Then mount the stones in gold filigree settings, and fasten them on the shoulder pieces of the ephod as memorial stones for the sons of Israel. Aaron is to bear the names on his shoulders as a memorial before the Lord. Make gold filigree settings and 2 braided chains of pure gold like a rope, and attach the chains to the settings.
Okay. So, yeah, not very helpful, at least to our modern ears, to wrap our head around what's happening here.
And it does seem like there's a lot of detail, but it's like maybe there's too much detail, and it's just like we don't make things like this.
Sure.
So
well, yeah, exactly. Like if I don't know, I'm sure the way we describe pants, like we talk about like 2 measurements, and
sure,
like length and the waist and whatever. And if you don't know what pants are, then that's going to be probably pretty confusing to only get 2 measurements. And,
right,
you don't know what the pockets are or anything like that. So yeah, this is something that is definitely context bound. The way I've heard rabbis describe it is it's kind of like like imagine an apron, kind of just like a apron from the waist down, put it on backwards. So it's like tied at the front, and then it has 2 straps from that waistband going up your back and over your shoulders, and that's where, like on your shoulders, that's where those 2 stones are. And then there's this little bit at the end that's going to attach to the breastplate, which is what we'll be talking about next. So the breastplate like kind of hangs on that from your shoulders over your chest.
Well, I think we are going to make a presentation with some pictures of some of these elements, and those pictures may or may not include Marty.
Yes.
As a model. we may have to get permission and or find the right image, but he might make his way into this episode after all.
Yes. Now, however confusing it is, and honestly, the description I gave, I'm pretty sure is not the same as Marty's costume, and who knows if it's accurate. It's really not the point here. There's a couple details, though, that I think, in light of what we were talking about earlier, of like, what does this clothing communicate? I think we have some stuff that should be popping out to us. Any guesses?
I mean, I'm looking at this word memorial as a memorial and as a remembrance or a memorial. And if I'm thinking back through the discussion about the lights, the luminaries being markers for these seasons and times, and it reminds me of, well, I don't know if it reminds me of the purpose of the festivals, even like to mark, this kind of sacred time, to be a remembrance of these various things. And so these stones as a remembrance feel, it's like portable, wearable festival type stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Like a reminder. And yeah, like the same way that the festivals, through the year walk you through, a lot of the big moments of your story. Yeah, this also calls back.
Yeah, orientation in time, the way that we were talking about the stars and the lights from the creation account.
And not only that, like if we just think about it in terms of like the kind of immediate meaning, we have 2 stones, and they have the names of all the tribes, 2 on one stone, or 6 on one stone, 6 on the other. And then where are they on Aaron's body?
The shoulder.
Yeah, the shoulders. Like he's it literally says he'll carry their names before the Lord. And it's interesting because it says memorial twice. The first point, it says that they will be stones of memorial for the children of Israel. And the phrase there of for, it's literally in front of or to the children of Israel. So like that could be read, and I think it's probably meant to be read like it's for their benefit, like it's supposed to be reminding you of the people. And not only that, it then reiterates that he's carrying their names before the Lord on his shoulders as a memorial. Like what the thing that's being emphasized here is that the priest is like carrying the entire community. He is a representative of the whole community, and he needs to carry that weight appropriately. That is like the first thing.
So am I reading it correctly and hearing that it's going both ways? Like the memorial is in verse 12 there for the sons of Israel, and then at the end of verse 12 it is a memorial before the Lord. And so is it like the priest is standing there and the remembrance, like that symbol, it's for the sake of both parties, for the sake of the sons of Israel and for the Lord? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, I think I may have misspoke a little bit before. Yeah, the first part, it just says they're a remembrance for the children of Israel. But that word for, I mean, Hebrew's tricky. It could mean that in the sense of it's like it's for their benefit.
Okay.
You could read it as that it's a reminder for them, but either way, like the main emphasis here is definitely on the priest, and that they are like the fact that it doubly emphasizes that they're on the priest's shoulders. And like the way I read it is it's kind of the first part is like you have to always be remembering that you are carrying the people, and then it reemphasizes it saying like when you are in front of the Lord, you are not just you carry an entire people on your shoulders, and you need to remember that.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So it's memorial for the sons of Israel is like this is a representation of them. It's a memorial of them.
Yes.
Before okay, that makes sense.
And in the first time, it just says it's a remembrance of the people. The second time, it emphasizes. It says specifically he will carry or bear their names, shemotam, their names, like. They are supposed to be like represented. Their names are there. It's not just like this disembodied sense of responsibility. It is a real group of real people, and you're carrying all those names. And I think what's like really important here, and I'm probably going to reiterate this a couple times, is that when we start thinking about this and how we apply it, there's some of this that we just, all of us in the spirit of being a nation of priests, we can all do this and engage in this. However, there's a big asterisk and, red flashing lights that there is also a part of this that is specifically aimed at spiritual leadership. And that creates so a lot of what I'm going to be taking this, episode toward is trying to talk about how we embody this as, everyday priests, not necessarily in the same manner that I would teach us, like if I was talking to a group of spiritual leaders. And like there are additional like literal responsibilities that come with that. And I think that's important to recognize before we start picking this apart, because my primary the group I have in mind is those of us that are trying to represent God to the world and be these the nation of priests, the people that are doing that work of reconciliation, navigation, bringing light. Like that is a priestly role. And the degree to which this applied to us is gonna, we have to keep in mind that there's that whole spiritual leadership messy conversation that overlaps here. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think we can see that a little bit here. But even though like probably most of us listening to this are not in positions of broad spiritual leadership, or the degree to which we are pretty minor. We don't necessarily have a whole community on our shoulders, but I think nevertheless, it's a really good idea to, when we're before God, especially as, for those of us in the audience who are Westerners, particularly if you're American, to see your time with God, like not just being about you and God or your immediate problems, but like you as just the tip of an iceberg of, all of the humanity everywhere. Like you are a part of that. We bear a long lineage of tradition and people that we're interconnected with. And anywho, so this is not a something that we necessarily have to take as like a burden of responsibility, but can definitely be a way of deepening how we see ourselves in relation to the world and the people around us. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts on the shoulder stones?
I don't think so. It's actually not true. I still have lots of questions, but I think we just need to move on.
Yeah.
I'm actually already looking ahead at all the many stones coming up. So
yes.
Shall we continue?
Mm-hmm.
Fashion a breastpiece for making decisions, the work of skilled hands. Make it like the ephod, of gold and of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and of finely twisted linen. It is to be square, a span long and a span wide, and folded double. Then mount 4 rows of precious stones on it. The first row shall be carnelian, chrysolite, and beryl. The second row shall be turquoise, lapis lazuli, and emerald. The third row shall be jacinth, agate, and amethyst. The fourth row shall be topaz, onyx, and jasper. Mount them in gold filigree settings. There are to be 12 stones, one for each of the names of the sons of Israel, each engraved like a seal with the name of one of the 12 tribes. And then jumping down to verse 29, whenever Aaron enters the holy place, he will bear the names of the sons of Israel over his heart on the breastpiece of decision as a continuing memorial before the Lord. Also put the Urim and the Thummim in the breastpiece, so they may be over Aaron's heart whenever he enters the presence of the Lord. Thus Aaron will always bear the names of making decisions for the Israelites over his heart before the Lord.
I just want to say you did a really good job pronouncing all of those names, Brent. That's there's a lot of tricky ones in there. You did a good job.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we have a little bit of a kind of, you can see the parallels between this and the piece we just read. Once again, we have precious stones. We have the 12 names being carved into them, and the importance of Aaron carrying them, but with a whole lot of distinctions and differences. And let's go through some of those. What are some of the differences you noticed?
Each stone gets just one name on it. There are 12 instead of 6 divided into, or 12 divided into 2. There's 12 divided into 12.
Yes, absolutely. What else is different about the stones?
I'm just imagining the coloration. Like there's a lot of color in these stones, and onyx. Yeah. Onyx is just black.
Yeah, exactly. They're all different stones, whereas before they were on the same type of stone. What else? There's another big one that they repeated a couple times.
There's the engraving thing, which is one of the things that I was thinking about pointing out the first time around. Like, first of all, it seems like there's a whole lot of extra detail about this. It's like, take 2 onyx stones and engrave on them the names of the sons of Israel. Okay. That seems like all the more information I need to know to do what I need to do there.
Yeah.
But then it goes on in the order of their birth. It's like, okay, well, don't they always do stuff in the order of birth already? But okay, fine. 6 names on one stone and the remaining 6 on the other. It's like, okay, well, I mean, sure. Like, I guess maybe somebody didn't think about it and they started writing and they got 8 names and then like, oh, only 4. Like, it just seems like all this extra detail, but whatever. But then it says, engrave the names of the sons of Israel on the 2 stones, the way a gem cutter engraves a seal.
Yeah.
And then it repeats that. Each engraved like a seal with the name of one of the 12 tribes. So what is it about a seal that is different from a normal gem engraving?
That's a great question. And honestly, I have had this thought before and have kind of bandied around a couple different explanations. Like, I think the most simple one is maybe it's like, when you think of carving something into a stone, you think of carving into it. Maybe this is meant to indicate that it's supposed to be like embossed, like they're carving around so the names stick out rather than sticking in. If that makes sense.
Okay.
Could be that. It could also be maybe a reference to the function of a seal. Like maybe the stones are meant to communicate that, like, like a seal is kind of like a signature is now. It's used to authenticate that something came from you. Like maybe it's meant to underline the priest as representative is like a genuine representative of the people, like how he represents them. The people are like giving their consent, like, yeah, how you represent us, like we're giving you the right to represent us, like we're giving you our seal. But yeah, there's honestly, we've had to cut so much from this. There's a lot of digging left to do, and I'm sure if you hop on Safaria and look at some Midrash, there's probably a lot of really interesting stuff on that. But yeah, that's a great detail to pick out, Brent.
One other thing about the gems from the NET footnotes, there's Yu Kasudo in some big volume on Exodus points out that they're the same stones mentioned in Exodus 28, referring to the garden, which is obviously after the fact here, but it's just interesting that that the writer connects these stones to the garden.
Yeah. Wait, sorry. You said it was the stones referred to in the, yeah, I mean, it does have the stones that are translated as onyx are mentioned.
Yes. But in Ezekiel 28, the whole list.
I thought you said Exodus 28. I was like, that's the chapter we're in, Brent. Okay. All right. Confusion averted.
This guy writing a volume on Exodus,
I see,
points out that the gems here are brought up again in Ezekiel 28,
yes,
and connected to the garden.
Yes, absolutely. And on that note, like, yeah, the connection being made to the garden, and that's really interesting. Obviously, yeah, the time is flipped, but there might be an interesting connection there. Yeah, definitely the shocham, translated as onyx. Well, one thing is we don't know what all these specifically are, but we can see all the stones have proper names and they're all different. So this is definitely like, whereas the first set of stones were emphasizing the weight of the people as like an entire community, this is definitely emphasizing them as individuals. And I wonder too if this kind of answers some of your questions, Brent, where it's like the point that the text seems to be coming back to is that, like, your names are being carried in front of God's presence, into God's presence, like that. There's so much care that every name is there and what order it goes in. Like it feels like it might be going into such detail to honor the people and to let them know, like, they're not being forgotten, like not even a little bit. Like, we're not going to mix up you and your brother. Like, every single one of you is remembered, is in their right place. Like, we're going to do this right and make sure that that you are fully represented. But in the second chunk here with the breastplate, like, not only are they on individual stones, but like, let's talk again about placement. It mentions this several times. Of where are these stones placed?
Over his heart.
Over his heart. And it mentions that a couple times. And what's also interesting here is, it called this the breastplate of what was yours? Making decisions? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And that's not a bad one. But the literal word here is mishpat, which we might remember as being one of the words for justice, and specifically of making justice decisions that are like, that require a lot of discernment, making sure everyone is taken care of properly. And so with this, this idea of not just making decisions, but even making difficult decisions and weighing the needs of everyone individually. It asks that his heart, which we have to remember in the Hebrew Bible is not just, how we imagine it today as being like feelings oriented. The heart is kind of just the seat of your internal stuff, like your thoughts and your feelings and your hopes and dreams and ideas, your will, your intention, all that stuff is referred to as your heart. So they're kind of asking here, like, Aaron, when you can't just feel the weight of the people on your shoulders. When you are in here and when you're making decisions that are going to affect everyone from that weight, you aren't just making the best decision for the whole people. Those are individual tribes and they have individual needs. They look as different and diverse as the colors on your chest. And it needs to be in your heart, in your consciousness, both in how you feel and in how you think and reason. You have to be taking all these different people into consideration. We're not just doing some utilitarian, what's best for everyone is best, even if it, screws over a couple of the smaller tribes that don't matter. Who cares what happens to Naphtali? We kept Judah happy, so this was the right decision. Like, no, everyone has a place. Everyone on that is being considered. Their names are all individually on his heart. And another thing that's interesting, you read that there's something strange, that into the breastplate, so it described it as kind of this piece of cloth. There's all the jewels on one side, and it's folded in half, and that now it has kind of a little envelope thing, and that's attached to the two shoulder plates of the ephod, and something is put inside of that little pouch. And it's called the Urim and the Tumim, which is not usually translated. It's kind of assumed that it's some sort of specific thing, but it literally means the lights and the completion or perfection. So once again, we have lights showing up. And there's a lot of weird midrash about this. We see it come up in in some of the Davidic stories where it's used like for divination and stuff like that. It's used to communicate with God. But without getting too much into that, like we should note here that, we once again have this idea of light being combined with decision making and understanding, the difficulties of leading a group of people, not always being about okay, where do we go and what do we do? Because it's okay, they have a pretty good idea of that. They're going to the promised land. They know where it is. They know how to get there. There's a much bigger and more complicated question when we get into those questions of time. Like, when do we go? How fast do we go? And even the more particulars of do we take the slow path? Do we take the quick path, even though it's a little bit more shady? How do we navigate this in all the nuances that make community difficult to lead? We talked last time about how community is fruitful, but actually being in community and figuring out how to navigate that in a direction that's going to take some light, and that's a big part of what we're talking about here.
This guy Umberto Moshe David Casuto.
Oh yeah.
Big old commentary on the Book of Exodus from 1967. Apparently, maybe I should just link it in case anyone's interested in picking up a $40 500-page tome of commentary. But apparently, it goes into quite a bit of detail about what the possibilities of these two pieces could be.
One other thing I want to mention here is that in this second article of clothing with stones and remembrances on it, is that one word is added here that'll, if you remember, we talked about it earlier with the light. It's the word tamid, constantly, always. The breastplate is supposed to be before Adonai constantly, before God constantly. which again, if we're talking about like what this communicates, like God knows they're an entire people, but it's when their names are all separated and given unique individual character. God says, I want to always have that right in front of me. I always see you in your own context. Like I always remember you in that way, not just as a big blob of humanity, like you in your context. I know who you are.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of it, but I just think it's really interesting that the communal representation on the onyx is on the shoulders, being born there, like you talked about, like a weight, you know, when you carry something there, you're bearing it up on your shoulders. And then this being specifically over the heart. I don't know. I think it's really interesting, the division of individuals over the breastpiece, over the heart, and the community on the shoulders. And I'm thinking of, you know, for those who do lead communities and how very difficult it is to make wise and just and righteous decisions, and weighing and oscillating between the individuals in the community. And I don't know. I don't know. At the end,
I'm so glad you brought that up. No, let's sit on this for a second, because
okay.
I think you're onto something. Because like I feel like there is a knee-jerk reaction to flip it, to look at the whole community, the weightiness of like, oh man, there's all those people and I have to please them all. Right? Like I have to make a decision knowing, and this is what's in my heart. Like, oh, what are all these people? How are their reactions going to be? And the actual like individual needs represented there get lost in that. And you still have to carry the weight of that. You still have to carry all the people with all the problems and all the complaints coming to you. Like I know pastors, I know how real that is. But what's on your shoulders, it's like, that's the burden that you carry, right? Like you aren't thinking about it necessarily. You know, it's there and you deal with it and you carry it. But what is it you're going to put upon your heart? Is it thinking about, you know, how the whole group is going to react, or thinking about all the individual people, the smaller groups, the smaller tribes that, you know, they could really easily get left out or have a decision made that doesn't benefit them, but benefits the other, you know, the 8 important tribes. Mm-hmm. And this is a call to be like, no, you have to carry the weight of the whole people. But when you're actually making decisions, you need to see all the different needs and smaller communities and take all of those into account. Like that's what's supposed to be on your heart. And that is the thing God wants in God's presence. It says, you know, that should be a remembrance before Adonai continually. Mm-hmm. And it repeats that again at the very end, upon his heart before Adonai constantly, I should say. And so it's like God isn't interested in us trying to lead, to make decisions, if we're just going to look at the community as a big, massive humanity that needs to be managed so that there's, you know, damage control, cost benefit analysis, just making sure that it's as efficient as possible. Like God wants us to see the actual interlocking, unique pieces, and to see the body as like all those organs need to be taken care of. Like we can't just ignore the small ones that seem like they aren't as important. I think that's a huge distinction.
Yeah. And you start to get a picture of like why this is a full-time position that somebody has to be set apart for, and they can't do other work. Because it is so very weighty and nuanced and complex.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that weightiness is a big part of it, because it's you're going to have to carry it one way or the other, and actually being devoted to going against the grain a little bit and being like, okay, I'll carry the heavier burden so I can focus my attention on the actual needs here. Like that takes some doing, not just in terms of the effort, but in the way of like actually retraining our hearts to have God's priorities there. That it takes a lot of devotion and a lot of intention.
I certainly do not envy the position of having to make those sorts of, like, just as a dad of a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old running around each other. Like, I seriously want to have like 25 cameras just all over my house, because every single day there's some sort of like, what happened? How am I gonna like, because both of my boys have different, like, these different moments where like they're just very sweet to each other, but then there are other times where it's just like, nope, I want that, I'm going to push you down. And how do I figure out which one actually happened in that moment? So this, and that's a very simple, low stakes sort of decision making versus what a priest or a church leader or whatever.
Yeah.
Like there are some really, really heavy decisions to make when you're in this kind of position.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it's the picture that you get too, is that there's something very also lonely or isolated about this. Like when Aaron is entering the holy place, there's not a bunch of people with him. There's not a whole committee, but and I think there's a great movie called Diary of a Country Priest, which is, and there are many actually great movies about this phenomenon of being a leader in a community, a spiritual leader. In this case, it's a priest, like a Catholic priest. But there's something about the nature of the relationship between leaders and the people that is like very intertwined. Like Aaron is wearing the names of all of the groups, and yet also like it can be a very lonely position. Where you are apart from them, like it is precisely bearing them up in this way that puts you apart from them, and that you are responsible for, that Aaron is responsible for remembering when making the decisions, right? Remembering all the individual people. He has to do that, but he doesn't necessarily then get to come out and explain himself to all of the people, or, like there are going to be people who aren't going to understand the decisions, and it's up to him. It's up to him to execute it with justice, but they're not going to look at it all the time and think that it is just.
And I think that's where the shoulder stones come in. Like you have to bear that weight, because for Aaron to want to come out and explain himself to every angry person, it's like, that at that point that becomes more about Aaron, like just not having to deal with it, because it's not
right.
Doesn't practically serve that much of a purpose. And like you've just got to bear that weight at the end of the day. And like, oh man, that's huge. But man, these are longer ones, but we're not even halfway through all the clothes. So let's keep it rolling. Let's hear about this robe.
Okay. Where are we? Verse 31. Yeah. Make the robe of the ephod entirely of blue cloth, with an opening for the head in its center. There shall be a woven edge like a collar around this opening, so that it will not tear. Make pomegranates of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn around the hem of the robe, with gold bells between them. The gold bells and the pomegranates are to alternate around the hem of the robe. Aaron must wear it when he ministers. The sound of the bells will be heard when he enters the holy place before the Lord, and when he comes out, so that he will not die.
A lot going on here.
An unexpected reasoning for this comes right out the end.
Yes. And one thing I want to say first too, because this is something I've seen in rabbinic interpretations, is that when it talks about the opening for the head, they say that the technical Hebrew should be translated that it's like edge should be folded within it, which it doesn't make a lot of sense when I just say that, but it's like it's kind of how they would construct chainmail armor, where you don't just have like the edge of the mail, it's actually like folded over so that it's still strong at the top. So it has like an extra length of collar that's kind of like a turtleneck, but flipped down. And the reason for this, the rabbis say, is so that they can't tear their clothes like you would when you're mourning. And I think that's an important thing to to bring in here, especially because the death part that's brought up later has a pretty specific incident tied to it. Before we dig into that, other thoughts, bells, the pomegranates, what's going on here?
Yeah, the pomegranates always kind of throw me off. Like,
okay,
it just seems like a weird. I don't know. Like, were pomegranates so common? I guess maybe, or just.
I mean, I think so.
Yeah, I don't know. I never think about pomegranates, so it's just always weird that they come up as the illustration.
And yeah, I mean, I know that their pomegranates are one of the fruits they bring back when the spies come out of the land. So I think they know about them. I don't know. Like, they don't feature super prominently in biblical stories, that's for sure. But because we maybe don't have the best cultural understanding of that, let's start with the other one, bells. I think this is one we can wrap our heads around a little bit. So if he's got bells all along the hem of his robe, what is the immediate effect of that?
Noisy.
Noisy, right. And functionally, that means, you can always tell where the priest is. You're going to hear a little jingling when a priest is around, which, what does that do? Like, what does that change about being a priest?
Well, I mean, there's no secret agent priest.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, everyone around knows that the priest is at work.
Yes.
In that moment.
Absolutely. And it does mention that this is worn when they're ministering. So, like, if you're thinking in a context where, like, priests weren't serving all the time, they could have normal lives, but when they're being a priest, when they're ministering, there's no maybe privacy is the wrong word, but there's no, like you said before, there's no secrecy. Like, everyone knows where you are pretty much, like, at all times. Like, your presence isn't hidden. It's obvious. It's always obvious that you are present.
Yeah, I was thinking it's on the one hand, you could look at it as, it guarantees your integrity so that you can't be in secret, but maybe a more positive spin would be it's because you are meant to be found when you are ministering. Like, people want to come and find you to be ministered to. So
yes.
you're just advertising that it's a beacon. It's a lighthouse. It's a thing that's meant to draw people in when they need to find you.
Yes. And also, we should remember these are golden bells, which gold is the substance that is prevalent when it's in God's presence. So it has that effect for sure of, like, oh, the priest is here for you. And to kind of draw on that, like, the bells highlighting the priest's presence. Now let's think about what the pomegranates that are alongside them, like, what is that image? Like just think about, like, I know you said you don't think about Brent or pomegranates a lot, Brent, but, like, you've seen the inside of a pomegranate, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what's it like?
Juicy.
It's like
juicy.
It's a whole bunch of, like, little seeds.
Mm-hmm. A whole bunch.
It's like
of
a cluster. There's like
little...
it's like a whole cluster.
Yes, and there's about 1 billion of them in there. It is numerous. You pop one open, and it's just seed. They're all stuffed with juice, and I can't say for sure, like, how far this goes back historically, but to this day, like, in Judaism, the pomegranate is it's often associated with mitzvot, with doing good deeds, following Torah, and that your fruit should be numerous as the seeds of a pomegranate.
Okay, I was actually picturing the wrong thing. In my mind, I was thinking of a grapefruit. Yes. So pomegranate, very different, quite full of seeds.
Yes,
this is actually kind of preposterous.
Yes, and either way, like, I kind of mentioned this a bit earlier, but coming off of day 3 with the idea of the land bringing forth this life in the form of fruit, the priests are like their presence with bells is also adorned with these pomegranates. Like, where they go is fruitful. Their presence should be fruitful. And that again, like, kind of reminds people on both sides. Like, I think, kind of hewing to what you were saying, read, like, we could read this cynically, like, oh, this is to keep the priest from doing, naughty things and acting in secret. But it could also just be a reminder for the priest, like every time you hear that bell, you're like, oh, right, I'm a priest right now. I need to be fruitful. I need to be a pomegranate tree for these people that are around me that are coming to me because they hear my presence and they're coming to me for help. And I think that also fits in with the inability to tear their robes. Like, this is a time that is not about you, even in like those most precious of feelings, like when you're grieving. And like, that is even something like, that's not what you bring to your job as a priest. Which, in this day and age might sound cruel, but I think it, especially with how priesthood ended up working, where it's like, you don't just have one person who's just supposed to be on all the time and supposed to stuff their feelings down. It's more that, like, when you are fulfilling this crucial role, like, you don't bring your own baggage into that, which I think, especially when we reflect on the decision-making part that we just talked about, is really important. And now that I've brought that up, when we think about doing things in secret and priests dying when they're before God, does this bring anything to mind? I'll let you in on a little secret. This is a reference to something that happens technically later in Torah, and that is the story of Nadav and Avihu, who are mentioned in this very chapter.
I was going backwards, and I was thinking, like, oh man, what am I missing that's going to be so obvious? But yes.
And we see that they do die while they are being priests. And there's a lot of debate about exactly what they did. A lot of people focus on, like, oh, they brought alien fire. But if you look at the context there, it happens at the inauguration of the temple, or the tabernacle, I should say. So very connected with this moment that we're reading here. And I think why there's a intertextual reference. But it's on the day of the inauguration, fire, like lightning, goes out from God's presence over the ark and lights the altar. And the people, like, the first time they encounter God's presence, they're freaked out at Mount Sinai. Here, they're full of joy, and they start worshiping. And these priests go away in secret in the inner part of the tabernacle to do their own little private worship ceremony. And I think that's what this is saying, is like, you're not a priest for yourself. Like, this is an anti-ego thing. Like, there is not because you have access to the inner sanctum, that is not a VIP pass. Even though, like, there, the text heavily implies that they were, like, doing it out of a sense of devotion. But God was like, no, you don't understand your role. You're supposed to be with the people. You're here for the people. You're carrying their name around. You are supposed to be with them. These bells mean that you are not supposed to, your presence is for other people to be aware of. Your fruit is for other people to taste. And that is so crucial here. And I think, hopefully we can see, like, why this is so needed in the conversation about spiritual leadership. But, like, for us, like, as individuals, not necessarily in a position of leadership, especially in the way, like, our culture, a lot of our intimate moments function on, like, sharing and sympathizing, and a lot of that is really good. But it's also important to know, like, when you are showing up for someone as a priest, it's not like selfish or anything like that to, like when you make your presence available, when you put bells on and say, hey, I could be here for you as you're walking through this difficult time. That's not a time for you to be going like, oh, hey, like, oh, that happened to me too, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm sure there's context where that is appropriate, but for us in our very egocentric, individualistic Western culture, like, we need to to treat that like the plague and be thinking about like, how can I be with others in their moment of worship, not heighten my own moment of worship? How can I extend that to other people and be giving my fruit away? Like, that's the point of fruit. Plants don't eat their own fruit. They give it away. It's for creating new life elsewhere. And the role of priest really calls us to be egoless and selfless. I mean, I think we can see echoes of Jesus in this. Like that's this stuff was always here, but like that is what being a priest calls us toward.
It reminds me of so my wife Leanne is a professional counselor. And in the counseling world, it's called transference. Like, you're supposed to avoid transference where they're talking about a thing and you are making it about your thing, or you resist the urge to over kind of share. And I think that there is wisdom in that we need to listen to. One of the things that I find interesting about pastoral ministry, though, which is what I do, is that there is more like sharing of life. It's not simply a clinical relationship,
Yeah.
But I think I'm just thinking about like one of like my I call him my other soulmate who I work with. His name's Derek, and he's he's just my other soulmate. That's the best way I can describe it. And there is a way that he ministers that it's like a donation of self. It's a giving of self. That's not like he doesn't become like a vacuum. Like, I am just a faceless, personalityless, like body or ear that is here to like receive what you are saying. And I am not like a interactive, like personal agent in the whole thing. Like, no, he is able to like give himself to the person in a way that is personal, but that it's not about him. It's not about gratifying like some desire that he has to like share his experiences and kind of a Me Too or a, like one-upsmanship or whatever like it could be twisted into. And I just think it's like it's a process of maturing and learning how to, and maybe for some of us, like I know that I definitely have the pitfall there in front of me to share in a way that it would make it about me, but I think there is real goodness and value in like being a fully present self with somebody else when you are ministering to them, and being willing to, but it's a matter of wisdom, knowing how and when and to what degree to share, to say Me Too, like to do all that kind of stuff. And we just have to be aware of our own vices.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
And that's where I think like it's kind of beautiful the way these kind of guardrails, if you will, are there. Like, it doesn't just say like, hey, you're not allowed to tear your robe. It just gives you a robe that's like, hey, you that's not what this is for. This isn't for you to vent your own emotions on. And like you said, like, you do need to bring yourself when you show up, and that might involve you sharing part of your story, but it takes a lot of discernment to know when you're doing that to fill time or to pull away from something that's really heavy, or because you have an agenda to like, hey, I don't really want to just sit with this uncomfortable thing.
Yeah.
Especially like, I can speak for myself, like as a man and having been socialized with like, a certain definition of masculinity that does and fixes, it can be a way of proving my own worth, to go, oh yeah, I've been there and I've actually dealt with it, and actually like and you're going to be okay too, but like, here are my bona fides on like why I can help you and why I'm worthy of having this conversation with you, instead of just having the conversation,
not assuming that your way through this is going to be like my way through this.
Exactly.
But is there a way that I can share my way that actually helps you find your own way and doesn't assume that you need to copy me because I'm,
And I'm not sure if this bears out across contexts, but I know for myself, whenever I find myself having to give backstory, then I know like, I'm just, I'm doing the old man Josh thing and talking about what happened back in my day when I did that. And it's like, yeah, that's not
right.
If you need that much background and detail, then it's not about just giving them a gift from your own experience. It's about, having them appreciate you, which like we all need to be appreciated, but that's not the priestly role.
Right. That's not the time for it. Right.
Yes. And I think, in the body where we have a different organization conception of how to navigate this space that the priest did, we can modify that, but we do need to, like, when we're in this role, like, again, yeah, I love what you were talking about there. I think the robe is really about presence. Like, how are you present here? And how are you, to go back to the pomegranates, are you giving them fruit or are you eating your own fruit? Are you getting high off of your own supply? Like, how are you actually helping that person? Which, relies on having their name in front of your heart when you're making decisions. And, if you're in your head right now and thinking like, man, you're kind of going overboard, maybe like overextending this idea of selflessness and reading too much into it, let's go ahead and read the next little article of clothing and see if these themes don't continue to develop on the same trajectory. Brent, take us away.
All right, verse 36. Make a plate of pure gold and engrave on it, as on a seal, holy to the Lord. Fasten a blue cord to it to attach it to the turban. It is to be on the front of the turban. It will be on Aaron's forehead, and he will bear the guilt involved in the sacred gifts the Israelites consecrate, whatever their gifts may be. It will be on Aaron's forehead continually, so that they will be acceptable to the Lord.
Aaron wears a crown, and it says, holy to Adonai, holy to God. But the function of it is so that all of the iniquity that's being atoned for rests on Aaron. That's what it means to be holy to the Lord. That's what he's carrying on his shoulders. And at the end, what did it say? It said, I think your translation said something a little different, but in the translation I have here, it says to bring favor for them being the people, to bring favor for them before Adonai. Like, this is so egoless. This is like entirely about the people. Aaron is carrying their burdens so that God will have favor with them, or they'll have favor with God. And that is such a, like, we usually frame holiness, go figure, as like how we conduct ourselves as individuals. But this really places the locus of it on not how good we're doing as an individual, but how we are engaging and participating in our community, and who we're doing it for. Holiness isn't just doing everything for God's sake, because, man, is it easy for that to become centered on us. It's for us to be there for the community, for the people, to take on and bear all that difficult stuff, all that messiness, help them navigate through it, and to do it so that they can be good with God. Like, that is just such a... You have a gold plate on your head. It's like a crown, but it's this crown that's like, I will hold all of your sin. It literally said, whatever the sacrifice is, whatever is being offered, the priest just automatically is picking up the tab. It all rests on him. Like, that's huge.
Yeah. NET footnote says the word originally meant flour, but they think of it more as a plate because you can't really write on a flower in the same way.
Oh, interesting.
And the rabbinic tradition says it is 2 fingers wide and stretches from ear to ear.
Oh, interesting. And the word is tzitz, if that's related to the word for tzitzit.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Friends, should have been 14 episodes. Golly.
That's a really good observation. And bears a lot. I mean, we have a lot of theology, like Christian theology, that gets wrapped up with like and tied to cultic practice, like the Israelites' cultic practice in weird ways, and it communicates weird things to us about holiness and sin and what God can and can't bear to be around or whatever. And I just think it's interesting that like again, Aaron is bearing the guilt, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he is entering into the holy place with that.
Yes.
And so this, this weird, well, I'm just going to call it theological nonsense that we pass around, that like God is like afraid of like catching the flu or something, that he can't be in the presence of sin. I don't like, the sin is born into the very presence of the Lord. And so I think that's like to me, this is like where the kind of significance of like the whole Bema project kind of really starts to hit home for a lot of people, is like these things we've just kind of assumed for a long time that we know. And it's like these same kind of one-liners get spoken again and again. And it's weird because it gets tied to the same texts, like the very text that we're talking about now when it comes, like I said, to cultic practice and stuff like that, but like just twisted. And then you get like a meaning out of it that actually feels a lot like the opposite of what it should mean.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just think let's just sit with that. Like, let's just sit with that picture of Aaron with this plate of pure gold and this very luminescent, beautiful, set apart kind of thing. And what he is taking with him is the guilt involved in the gifts that the Israelites are Yep. It's really important.
Yep. It's so like what you said, it's so clear, but also so powerful in the text. And it's, again, to like go back to the big theme of like, what is being taught, what is being like visually taught is like, when you're here, I am holding you. I am, and I'm representing God to you. Like, this is what's holy to God for me to remove the burden from you. Like, man, what a way to help people navigate through those most difficult areas of life. And to have someone who can, we were talking about the clear oil before, to have someone who can be able to see clearly through your mess because they don't have an agenda other than to reconcile you with God, and that their ego isn't in the way, that when they're making decisions, they're thinking about your context and your needs as a whole, and that they're willing to, like, they have the bearing of someone, the posture of someone who is like carrying that willingness to be responsible for all the people around them. Like, that is so huge. And like, on the other hand, I think we can hear, like, if this was taken even more seriously as like expectations for leadership, spiritual leadership, like, oh my goodness, like, what a thing that would be. And actually, on that note, Brent, will you read the last little chunk about the clothing here?
Weave the tunic of fine linen and make the turban of fine linen. The sash is to be the work of an embroiderer. Make tunics, sashes, and caps for Aaron's sons to give them dignity and honor, which I believe those are the same two words as we saw earlier with Aaron. After you put these clothes on your brother Aaron and his sons, anoint and ordain them, consecrate them so they may serve me as priests. Make linen undergarments as a covering for the body, reaching from the waist to the thigh. Aaron and his sons must wear them whenever they enter the tent of meeting or approach the altar to minister in the holy place, so that they will not incur guilt and die. This is to be a lasting ordinance for Aaron and his descendants.
Man, there's a lot we could go into here. I don't think I'm gonna spend any time talking about the underwear, but I think it's really important when we come back to this phrase we heard at the beginning, like you said, glory and splendor, when we think about spiritual leaders decked out in glory and splendor, like we have an idea of what that means. But like, man, from step one, going through these the pieces of clothing and what goes behind them, the weight that's there. Like, to me, this feels like the first time I studied this, I was like, man, like, the spoiler alert, but next week, it's going to talk about like what the priest's actual job is, like actually describing what they do in a day. And it's like, man, that like, this is a weird way to do a job description. Like, you're kind of putting the important stuff at the end. Like, shouldn't we know about that first? Like, why are we just getting all the cool, like, hey, here's how you get blinged out. Here's like all the cool perks of the job. Even like what you just read, Brent, it talks about them being given authority and being sanctified, like all this stuff. And I think like we read that, and I know my first reaction was like, why start here? That feels like very shallow. That feels very like you're talking about how cool they're supposed to look. But I wonder if experientially it's like you put on these clothes and you don't know what you're going to do with them yet, but you know what they mean, and you know the role you're supposed to play broadly. And I wonder if the clothes are an invitation to fit the clothes. Like, they're supposed to be clothes of glory and splendor so that you can fill them in a way that measures up to that glory and splendor. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And like with this, like man, and I really wonder how intentional it is, especially, I don't know how deep the chiasms go, but we have this kind of repeated end bracketing, and we also had the chiasm in the fourth day of creation, and it makes me wonder if there's some parallels there. But more than anything, when I think about the priests and like where they would fit in that creation, like to me, it's like the idea that at the center of it, we have this idea of God giving us these lights, these ways to navigate, and seeing that like the content of that is all about the sharing of burdens and the selflessness it takes to create a harmonious community. Like, that just, on the one hand, like, I don't think anyone who's listened to this would say that the process the clothing describes, the role the clothing is supposed to be built around, it's not easy, but there is kind of a beautiful simplicity to it that feels, I don't know, attainable a little bit, like it doesn't, it's hard, but it's a doable kind of hard.
I love what you said about the bearing of one another and our burdens, like that is an orienting kind of thing. I guess what's going through my head is that when we minister to others in a way that is meant to like orient them in the darkness, in a time of confusion or lostness, like what I find often, like what the kinds of things that are very disorienting to people have to do with interpersonal relationship kinds of things, have to do with like an injustice or a lack of righteousness or a guilt. And that the priestly role is about, I mean, Marty has talked about this in other places, like one of the main roles of a priest, like the way he says it, is to help people navigate their own atonement.
Yep.
And atonement is about the conscience. And if somebody's conscience is eating at, like, because of mistakes that they have made or, just wrongs that they've done, it's as simple and it's as profound as you say about how do I bear you up? Like, I don't want to heap guilt on you. My job is not to make you feel bad. That's the exact thing that is like, it's maybe a helpful distinction to realize that like what keeps people, I think, from God, from the presence of God, is not the wrong per se. It's the guilt that is incurred, and they feel then like that it's the Adam and Eve problem, right?
Yeah.
The running and the hiding.
And on that note, let's see. I don't want to push back. I want to push a little deeper, because when you brought up atonement, I think there's an even deeper nuance there. Like I'd agree with you broadly about it being primarily about the conscience, but so in the Hebrew, the literal meaning of the word atonement is to cover, which, oh my goodness, how much bad theology has come out of this idea of like needing to cover over sin. However, that's not at all how the word is used in like Leviticus, when it's talking about like ritual atonement, like the actual process that Jesus is, supposed to be supplanting with a better version of it. It's a covering, not over sin, but between you and sin. To me, what this adds is, first of all, the guilt thing. Obviously, like it's showing you that that sin isn't you. Like you can change, you can repent, you can just go the other way. It's fine. You're good. But I think also like sin comes with so many compounding effects and can feel inescapable, even beyond just the mechanism of guilt, but for 1,000 other things. We hurt someone, and then sure, we feel guilty about it, but even when we can have some grace for ourselves, we might still feel fear that like, I don't have a right to talk to that person again. Like maybe they don't want to talk to me. And and all sorts of things like that, of like ways that the wound that is created by sin can overpower us in a number of ways, whether it's through building up habits or damage done to community or damage done to ourselves. And looking at the suffering that sin has created both in ourselves and others, and for a priest to come in and just try and shed light on how to bring God's reconciliatory and healing power to that suffering, to alleviate it. Like it isn't just taking off that burden of guilt, but it's also, it's in that same act I see, going and having that hard conversation that you thought would be impossible to have. Within that, I see like actually pushing and testing the limits that sin sometimes convinces us are there, that when they really aren't, like that aren't at all. And sin has a way of creating those kinds of false boundaries, false narratives, cycles that seem impenetrable. And guilt is certainly one of them. But I think there's a lot more complexity and a lot more like radical power that is held within atonement. And that kind of light that, like we've been talking about, doesn't just show you what's immediately in front of you, but shows you where you are in the dance. Like you are feeling the way you are because, hey, you need to reconcile with your community, and you also need to do some repentance. And, exactly like with the festival season, like, hey, you need to, it's Pesach. It's, maybe it's time for you to think about leaving Egypt. What does that mean? What does that look like? Or maybe you're at a different part of the year or a different part of your own season in life, and having someone there to give you light, just like with the stars. We talked about this before, right? They don't actually give light on the earth that you can like do stuff by, but they do help you know where and when you are and how to navigate the moment you're in, which like, man, if that's not what stresses us out most of all, like, I don't know what does. Like figuring out how to actually not just get through the day, but what do I do with my life? Like that's what our biggest problems end up, kind of feeding into, is what do I do with this whole big chunk of time that God's given me? And to see the priestly role as not necessarily fixing all of those problems, but giving teaching, giving light, giving God's presence in a way that teaches and helps people who are listening, helping them navigate. I love these images so much because I think there's so much potential locked up in here.
Man, I think that's so well said. Particularly, I loved what you said about how the effect of sin, that we become convinced that there are things that are immovable or impossible. And in a way, atonement is the role of the priest is helping break down that inward conviction that, like, no, this can't be fixed, this can't be restored, this can't be put right. And the role of the priest is to bear that up and say, well, let's go. Like, it's not impossible like you believe. Yeah, that's so good.
Once again, no shortage of things to wrestle with.
Yes.
Coming out of this.
Yes. So to kind of step back and just kind of look at where we've been, because there's a lot in this one. And again, spiritual leadership, all that complication in here. And for individuals listening to this, like, make sure you have a big old grain of salt in terms of how much of this you take on as responsibility versus how much you take on as kind of like a voluntary offering to fill a role and to use these kind of, I guess you could call them like techniques of presence, like ways of being present. Like that's an important thing, but I don't know all of your context and situations. So that is something that you have to do. But to go back to the very beginning of this chunk of the Mishkan, we start with the oil, that raw substance of light producing goodness that comes out of our community. And I would just like to, in returning to that, this bridge between community and priest, between, the priest needing the community to provide it for them to be able to do anything at all. And then the priest, the people needing the priest to be the one to tend to it continually. Because this is not something that, we can all do 24/7. Some of us can only be a priest for one or two times in a relationship with someone. We can maybe fill this role. Very diverse body, folks. You can't expect yourself to have every single role. But I think it's really important, if we maybe step out of the priest role, like how can you or your community, how can you/we participate in teaching as a community? Like, what gets communicated to the world around you, or even within the community you're in? What is communicated by how you exist and interact as a community in this conversation between the fruit of community, those olives being turned into oil, being turned into light? Like, how do you bring pure oil into your community? What does that look like? How can you show up and give the best of what you have to your community, or find opportunities for a community that is interested in bringing light? So I'm sure some people are in a situation where that is not even a certainty. And, communities come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. So like, how does I think all communities, I shouldn't say all communities, healthy communities, there's always going to be fruit that comes out of that. And how do you take that from something that you just use to nourish yourself and the other people in your community and actually put a spark on that and make it an inviting light, something that tells the world around you, or like I said, even just the people in your community, how does it communicate God's presence? Hospitality is one we talk about a lot, and just like the posture and way that we do hospitality, whether it's, even on the most obvious level, is it begrudging or is it open-handed? Is it stingy, or is it, maybe not lavish, but reasonably lavish? You know what I mean? Like, that is how we aren't just here to give light. we are here to, like, what do we fill our light with? What is that? What is it that we as stars are communicating? The next chunk, if we put that aside, is priests. And, we talked about the clothing of the priests, the way that, they aren't necessarily sources of light the way the sun is, but they are they are lights that exist even in the darkness. And sometimes the role of stars is just to let you know that you are in darkness and help you just be aware of the world around you. So although we talked about a lot, like how we fill the role of priest, I think, if you're struggling to consider like what that would actually look like, if it's hard to think of a way forward, flip it around and think like, who are the priests in your life? Or if you don't have any, like, how would you identify someone as a light in the dark? Not fixing the dark, but helping you get through that dark. Like, what is that? What are those qualities? And how can you follow on that path? Or just if you're in a place where you can't be a priest because you need a priest, really think about who those people are and devote some time to building community with them, because, I bet you they probably need some community too. Mm. And then the one thing I want to highlight if we think about the sacred garments themselves is, a lot of times when we think about teaching kingdom and spreading God's presence, we think a lot about, theology and gospel, and without wading too far that direction, I'd like us to think in more qualitative terms. Like, how would you teach kingdom with just your presence? Like everything we talked about with a priest, it doesn't involve the priest doing anything, saying anything, even acting in any kind of way. They just be there, just walking around. That in and of itself communicates something, the presence itself. And just like we talked about with day one, hint, hint, all these parallels are there for a reason. God's presence can be nourishing, right? Like the table, just knowing God's near can be nourishing, especially the more we dwell with that and trust in that. So how can you make your presence something that communicates that love, that communicates something that is spiritually nourishing? Doesn't have to be big. Like, I hope none of you out there feel like this is some big impossible task. Like, this is like, pick one of these things, pick something manageable. It talks in Leviticus about, priests needing to keep the fire lit all the time, and therefore the fire needs to be low. That's what the rabbis say. Keep the fire small. That's how you get it to burn all the time. But yeah, even just in a small way, how could your presence communicate God's presence? How could your presence communicate what kingdom is? And maybe just kind of a tag on here, like the focus of or the method of looking at this through the lens of time, not necessarily place and space. Like the stars are there to guide us through seasons and days and weeks. Like, I think a lot of times our gut reaction to try and fix things kind of comes from spatial thinking of, linear, A to B, you draw the arrow, boom, you're done. Whereas, like, when we start thinking in terms of time, when we start thinking of what would help this person get through their day, get through their week, when we actually start to think of their context in terms of something they have to trudge through every day, every hour, then we start to think of how to shine light on them that isn't about solving their problems, but helping them actually navigate life and taste of the fruit of God's presence. Like, how do we, I guess it kind of goes back to that, like, give a man to fish, teach a man to fish paradox. Like, how do you don't usually get the opportunity to teach someone how to do the whole thing, but how can you give them a little piece of God's presence, a little way of thinking about themselves, the way God sees them, like just a little morsel. You're a star. You're a star in the sky. You're not going to light up the whole thing. How can you just give them a little crumb of light? I think that when we think about that in terms of time, rather than actually just solving their immediate problems, A to B, it both lessens the burden and helps make what we give actually a lot more healing and honestly, a lot more full of light, a lot more useful. And we're not done talking about priests yet, but I hope maybe some of us can take a few steps down, becoming a nation of priests, a kingdom of priests.
The ones, just one small quick thing that was popping into my head when you were talking about with just being a presence, and you said small things. Here I meet a lot of new people and in my campus ministry, and the thing that I find has, like, it's such a small thing that has such a huge impact on people is remember their name. And I think that ties nicely to this idea of having the names individually written on the stones. What I do, I write people's names down after I meet them. It's kind of a weird thing. I don't let people see my notepad because I just like write a name and then one little thing about them. But I'll see a student on campus that I haven't seen in 4 months, and I met them one time, and I say their name, and it is crazy the way that people light up, and it communicates a lot of what their significance in the community, the way that God sees and remembers. So anyway, that's just a small, like, here's a practical thing you can walk away with. Write people's names down like a weirdo. Don't let them see you do it. But then you remember them and they're like, holy cow.
Oh, I love that you brought that up, because I think that's maybe we haven't focused on that as much. But yeah, like the whole priest thing is also, it looks very weird. Like it's not going to look normal.
Yeah.
And yeah, like don't be afraid to get weird with it, people.
Don't be afraid to get weird with it.
Yeah, I was so I do this. I do wedding photography, mostly in the summers, and the guy that I shoot with, he and I make it a very, very strong point to learn people's names. Like if we're going to spend all day with them, like on some senses, it's a practical thing where it's like, it's way easier to just address someone directly and tell them what we need them to do. Mm-hmm. But also, like, these people were selected by the bride and groom to be part of this day. Like, they aren't just some rando attending. Like, they are actually important people. And so to recognize that importance and know that, like, these people were selected specifically, like using their name is a way of communicating that. And I was in Waco meeting some listeners. Shout out to Courtney. And I was using people's names, and Courtney's like, "What is this? Some kind of party trick? Like, what is going on here? How do you know everybody's name?" And it's just you just have to intentionally ask people's names when you meet them, and then you have to intentionally use it, and you have to be okay with getting it wrong. Like there were several times during that meeting in Waco where I used the wrong name. Because, you know, like I meet people and initially it's like, okay, well, so on the left we have, and then on the right over here, and then this group, and then people start moving around and you mix it up, and you just have to be okay with getting it wrong. Yeah. And you just keep using those names, and like the willingness to put that effort in is what communicates the value. And I can't, like, I meet hundreds of people every weekend. When I'm shooting a wedding, I can't remember all of those names long term. Mm-hmm. I think in Reed's case, like this is somebody he's going to potentially interact with again pretty frequently. So it's a little bit smaller scale, but like in the moment, like I can actually, if I put the effort into it, if I actually try and I'm okay with not getting it right every single time, I can actually do a lot more than it seems like I would. Like, you put it into practice, and it's actually easier than you would think.
Yep. Absolutely.
The weight of what that conveys is so much more than the effort I put into it. Because most people aren't willing to put that effort in.
Man, I love that. Yeah, this is all perfect. I feel like I could keep talking about this for hours. There's so many ways to do this. Like, yeah,
Josh, I hate to break it to you, but we have been talking about this for hours.
Oh man, I'm just waiting for this. I'm waiting for the school to call me any second and say, "Hey, your kid's still waiting here to get picked up."
Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do about this. I don't know. We'll see how. Yeah, I don't know. This is crazy.
I'm sorry. Brent.
Anyway, it's fine. This has been an incredible episode.
Yeah.
The way to appreciate the tabernacle. Whew, there's so much there that I've just always glossed over my entire life, and I'm cherishing the opportunity to explore the depths of this with you. So don't take that the wrong way, Josh. I love this.
Oh no.
But with that, we'll close it out. Go to BaymontDiscipleship.com. Check out the show notes for this episode. We'll see what we can find for pictures of all these elements. And thanks for joining us on the Baymont Podcast. We'll talk to you again soon. Sorry, guys.
I'm angry.
That's the kind of energy we need today.
Yes, my energy is going to be, lost and confused, but angry. That's good energy.
Channel Marty's energy from 4 weeks ago.
You mean when we beat his stupid team in the AFC Championship? Josh, do you care about football at all?
No.
Okay, good. Marty's stupid Bengals, they lost to us. And you know what makes it even better? And this is really the last thing I'm going to say, because otherwise we'll talk about this too long. What's great about all of this to me is that last year when his team beat us in the AFC Championship, they went on and lost the Super Bowl. But our team went on and won the Super Bowl, which makes it 10 times as good. So anyway, that's it.
Full domination.
That's right.